I want to welcome you guys. This particular day of the meeting, I had a couple speakers in mind, but because of the holidays and everything, I think they were reluctant to go right after the holidays. So I created this day as time to talk about our interest groups. This is something that the board last year discussed. When I came on and started working with the Pomona, we have this long list of interest groups and interest group leaders, but we really weren't sure how outdated that was. And it turns out it was somewhat outdated. And so we're trying to start looking at that. And there's been clearly in the last couple months from emails that I've received interest in having those groups active. So I've had a couple people step forward to cover some places that became vacant when people passed away. And then we have several that we're not sure if they're active. So there's somebody who's been going through and trying to contact people where we've had contact information, and he's helping update that. But we have a lot of ones for which we only have a name, and we're not entirely sure how active those groups are. So my understanding of how the groups worked years ago, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this, because some of you have been around a lot longer than I have in NAFEX. But there were interest groups, and some of the groups would, before the days of the internet, they would send out their own little newsletter by mail. And I know of at least a couple groups, like the Apricot group did that, the Khaki Persimmon group did that, and they had people who were just interested in that particular fruit, and so they communicated by mail each year, a couple times a year, or by phone. And then as the internet became a big deal, and now there's Facebook groups and other resources, I think some of those interest groups fell by the wayside. The thing that I'm seeing is that we do have a lot of members who are not on the internet, or they're not on Facebook. It's particularly older members who never quite could bridge into the internet, or they choose to live a very non-internet tapped in lifestyle, which is fantastic. But they have a lot of knowledge to share, and they want to be active as much as possible interacting with NAFEX members. So I think that's something that we should consider and talk about a little bit on how we can include folks outside of the internet where possible, and how might we serve our NAFEX members directly. So there's a lot of Facebook groups that focus on berries and on apples and on peaches and things like that, and persimmon, that have people from all around the world, which are great. It's a lot of groups to be involved in if you're interested in a lot of things. So, and those groups are perhaps, ways of asking questions, but you may not get the question you want answered, or maybe you post something and 3 days later it's disappeared, it's down the feed, and no one else is going to see it. So I want to talk and just have you guys open up and talk about what you would like to see in the interest groups, and those of you that have had experience in years gone by when these groups were more active, if you want to give some insight, I would appreciate that insight that you have, and thoughts on how we might move this forward to help make this something that people can utilize and use. So most everyone's muted, and so I'm going to ask, I know we can't hear Bill, so Bill's not a person to be able to talk, but he can chat off to the side if he wants. But I don't know, some of the older, I don't want to say older, but those of you who've been in the group longer, like Tom Wall, or Larry, or Chuck, or Sandy, do you guys want to give some insight on what you know of the interest groups from past? No one's going to speak. So Larry, I don't know if you can unmute, but are you familiar at all with how the interest groups worked?
Yeah, we generally just listed that expert and they answered questions and broke up into small subgroups. The only one I was really active in was the Southern Pear group with Travis Callahan, who's deceased now. We had an active group for a while. This was 8 or 10 years ago. But yeah, we had our own little active group, and a lot of us still talk together. It gathered up some members outside of NAFEX that we got to join up with NAFEX, so that worked somewhat to do that.
Hey, we can't hear you.
Maybe she can hear.
I think
I pruned pear trees today 10 years ago from the pear interest group.
Okay.
Getting very garbled sound from the person I was just talking.
From Larry, yeah. His connection may not be great. I'm
an old time, long ago member, and I wasn't active for nearly 20 years.
It's bad here.
But in the background, I have Mike McConkey, and he's here with me, and he's going to talk about what the interest groups were like 30 years ago.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
I think you should not assume that those of us who are over 80, and that includes me, those of us who are over 80 sometimes do a lot of work on a computer.
Yes, yes.
So, yes, there are people who still have resisted, but I personally think that Facebook is filling up a huge vacuum that has formed around our interactions with other people. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I check it 4 or 5 times a day because there are questions and interesting things to see. Partly that's because I'm stuck in the house, but I think we have to encourage people who don't have internet access, but we have to realize that most of the people that are going to be interested in wanting information are in fact on the internet.
You know, if I could just add one thing, there's a huge segment of Gen Z and others who are opting out of social media for personal reasons, ethical reasons, you know, just it's a lifestyle choice. So it really happens kind of at both ends of the age spectrum, and certainly probably throughout all age groups to some degree.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well.
So I wanted, can I chime in for a second about Facebook?
Yep.
Because I didn't use Facebook before I joined this group, and then I had to start up in Facebook to visit all the Facebook group for NAFEX and the Facebook group for Pawpaws and the Facebook group for Persimmons. And I think we're doing a serious disservice to our members to expect everyone to depend on Facebook groups, because they honestly don't work terribly well, I feel like, for the kind of communication you want to get when you're trying to learn some detailed information about a fruit. I'll give the recent example as I'm trying to figure out some information about persimmons. I need some scion wood from special hybrid persimmons. I post to Facebook about it. I got basically no answers in the persimmon interest groups, but I did get a lot of information by reaching out individually through communication channels like email or messenger to individual members of NAFEX that I know. And I feel like if there was an interest group, that we could do something as simple as post a message to the interest group, which then went to each of those people maybe as an email message, assuming people would check their email. You might get better responses than right now, where I'm just, I post to several of the persimmon interest groups, and I have to hope that some other person who's browsing through their 6,000 Facebook notifications, they are new today since the last time they were on Facebook, happens to see mine and thinks to take the time to respond to it.
That's a good point. Very good points.
And I especially feel bad because I'm the one right now responding to the general input that people put on our website who keep coming and asking questions like, I want to start a heritage apple orchard. Who should I talk to? I'm interested in growing apricots in Georgia. Who should I talk to? And I have to right now send them to the Facebook group. And I feel really bad doing that because I know they're going to get very disappointing results the way I do when I just post things to the Facebook group.
Yeah.
Well, really, the ideal situation is that we get together at an annual meeting and we have little breakout groups so that people who are interested in certain crops can get together and talk to each other. But that's not going to happen this year. It's not going to happen for another year. In 2022, we can have small meetings or large meetings with small breakout groups. But for now, we have to rely on being able to send people to the right contact. And if they ask you a question, Eric, you need a list of who to send them to.
I do. And again, I know I'm showing my age here with respect to before social media, but do you guys remember mailing lists, right? Where we actually just had a list you send it to and everyone on the list gets it. And I just feel like getting that smaller audience of just NAFEX members who are members of the special interest group will give you more likely to receive the information you're looking for than this general posting to the Facebook group and the entire NAFEX populace and everyone in the world who wants to lurk there.
Yep. Good point. So I have a thought and I'll come back to it. But before I get to that, so Dan has, did you say Mike? Who?
Am I on, Dan?
Yeah, you're on.
I'm on.
So Mike, can you tell us how the groups worked?
Well, it's more like 40, 45 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we had the Pomona 4 times a year.
Uh-huh.
On the back cover, there was the interest groups and the head with contact information. And at that time, I was head of the fig group and the mulberry group.
Mm-hmm.
And it was totally volunteer. There was a lot of people taking part. I think AJ Bullard took over the mulberry group after I did, and AJ knew a lot, so he was able to share it. So I agree with, was it Eric? Mm-hmm. I agree with him about that you could go to some of these people, and they did have a lot of information. I own Edible Landscaping mail order nursery, so I'm still active in all those areas because I sell all those different kind of fruits and things. And NAFEX was the reason I got such a nice nursery. It was because there were so many pen pals that had some really great fruits. So,
For example,
so when I would get an email or a letter because I was my address was on the information. And then I do my best to answer a member or whoever. And I mean, we still do that really through our email. You can email us a question and we answer it. But then again, because of the wavering influence that NAFEX has had, there was a time when it got pretty big, I think, because there was a couple of writers from organic gardening that were really purporting our what we did, our attributes. It was great. And I think we got probably the biggest membership and we were very popular for a while there. But then I can remember too, when there was just a few people that were so influential in the group, and that would be Bob Curley mostly, his wife Mary, and then AJ Bullard came along, and some of these we'd have those annual meetings, of course, and they were always a rip. They were always fun because you had all these different people getting together, different temperaments, different beliefs and all that, but they all love fruit. So I think I've kind of covered, what the interest groups did then. They used to have a report every year. They had one report a year, and everybody would chime in. So if you had 15, 20 members of the apricot group, for instance, then everybody would kind of give an annual report. Well, this did well, this did poorly. This is how I grow things. This is where I live. And so you get, and then the head of the group would edit all that and put it into a report. So you get those in the Pomona. You can still see the old reports if you have some of the old Pomonas. So I think that's about it.
Is there no more Pomonas?
Yeah, digital and now print again.
Great. So that's kind of what Mike brought up, was some things that I was thinking about. So I would like to see these interest groups be more active. There are, like I said, some that are active, and the ones that I know about, I've actually asked them to send me some little updates. It would be nice to do basically what Mike said, have those interest groups active again, and an annual report of what's working, what's not working, feedback that goes into the Pomona, because right now it's getting better, but when I first started, getting people to submit stuff to the Pomona has been hard. It's getting better. This last the issue that's about to come out, we've had several people who've submitted stuff, so it's picking back up again like it should. But I would like to see a wide range of topics in the Pomona, so we're not always talking about apples, or not always talking about pears, or whatever. So I would like to see this this continue. And one of the things I thought about, there are two ways to reach people. The people who are not on the internet, obviously through the Pomona and through email and written correspondence would be helpful. Those who are on the internet and are comfortable with formats like Zoom here, we could schedule once a month our online conference, so to speak, or meeting that focuses on one or two of, two different species. So like the last meeting we talked, we had Jorge talk about mangoes. And so we could have whoever the interest group leader is, have them maybe either speak or find a speaker or two who are willing to chat about what they're doing, and then open it up for people to ask questions and to basically network like we would at a normal in-person meeting. So that's kind of the vision that I've been thinking about. I don't know how you all feel about that, but we would spread it out throughout the year so that there's only one meeting a month online, and we would focus on one or two different species at that time and kind of spread it out over the year. Any thoughts on that?
Sounds really good to me to do Zoom meetings like that. Just
take the chair again.
I find it, really hard sharing information by emails because I'm a slow typer.
Uh-huh.
It can take me an hour to correspond with somebody and answer on an email. Whereas if I can talk about it or do it by phone, I can get out 10 times the information in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
And so I think that doing periodic Zooms for the interest groups, where somebody, that's heading it up, could give a synopsis of what's happening, and then just open it up to interaction between everybody that has that interest.
Okay.
You get a lot more information shared that way, and more people can access the information than only one person. So you don't have to duplicate it 10 times.
Yep. I agree.
So one of my major interests is organic fruit production, which I've worked at for 45 years. And it's still extremely difficult in the Southeast, but it's getting closer and closer all the time, working with biology and nutrition to drive the plant's own immune system. And eventually, I think in another couple of years, I'm going to be able to do it entirely that way.
Cool.
But I'm willing to share that and teach people, but I don't have a lot of time available. I just took on a full-time job to regenerate a 60-acre fruit farm.
Wow.
So I feel like if we're going to have leaders of interest groups, we need some way that members of NAFEX can join an interest group and a way for the leader of that group to keep track of who the members are, so you can let them know when these Zoom meetings are and how to attend.
One of the ways that, one of the tools that's out there is Google Groups. So even if someone isn't on social media, it doesn't help with folks that aren't on the internet at all. Those folks are just going to need some, manual support and assistance. But these days, most folks, it seems, have some kind of email, and it's free to get a Gmail account. So anyway, Google Groups might be kind of a modern day, listserv. And then, of course, there's actually listservs are still out there. So,
yeah.
If we use Google Groups, does that mean that the leader of each special interest group would have to be someone with a Gmail address in order to maintain a group?
yes, every participant would have to have a Gmail address, but it's free to do so.
Yeah, I can imagine a lot of people not wanting to have those extra addresses. They would feel like Google's tracking them, but sure.
Sure.
So another option that I'll throw out there, it's very easy to create surveys. And so it's possible. So I have all the members. I can pull down a spreadsheet of all the members at any given time, and I can email the group. We could create a survey that says, which interest groups are you interested in, and then list your name and your preferred contact. And then whoever the interest group person, the leader is, we give that information to them. So that would, and then however that interest group person chose to run the group, whether they wanted to do a Google group or something else, that's up to them. But that would be a way of, let's say Eric, we'll use Eric as an example. So Eric wants to be, he wants to learn about pawpaws and persimmons and cherries. So, if he got one single email and clicked what his interests were, put in his name, put in his email, then we have all that information at once, and then we divide it out to the interest group leaders. If that's, I think that would be possible.
That the survey thing I still feel like we need to give some kind of guidance or tools to the interest group leaders. Otherwise, we're putting an awfully big burden on each one of them to come up with their own method to coordinate a group. And getting people to volunteer for these things is hard enough as it is. And I feel like we need to make it as easy as possible.
Yeah. And if it's simply, so if the interest group leader just wants to do a Zoom meeting, that's pretty simple, because I can schedule, we could have a set date every month, day and time, and then, or that person can say when they want to have the meeting, and we schedule that. It can always go through my IU account. That's no big deal. And then they just need to make sure they're on the call. But if they want to do an email newsletter or something like that, then that would be, I think they could pick and choose how they want to run the group. But if we do a monthly Zoom call, then that's something that we as the board and myself can help facilitate.
You can get a printed one, or you can get an online one.
Chris, that could be a lot of work for you. It would be nice if we had something that, tools that folks could use. Because how many interest groups do we have potentially?
So let me share my screen, which is probably.
I passed out when I saw the list and how many there were.
Yeah, and we could probably, I think there's some that can be narrowed down a bit. Let me find. This is why I wanted to use my other laptop. That's going to take me a moment.
I think it's wonderful. I just want to, make sure that you're not overwhelmed, just setting up Zoom calls when your energy could go into something else.
Well, with Zoom, so the nice thing with Zoom, like what I did with this conference, is I just told, I went into my university account and said, I want every Thursday for the next 2 months. Or I could say, I can schedule it out for an entire year and it's done. It's the same Zoom. It's the same link, same everything. So the only thing is I just need to be on there to record it. So let me
Yeah.
Where?
hold on just a second.
Do you know him?
I don't think so.
Oh, I seem vaguely familiar, but the name kind of, but so long ago.
Cute daughters.
Is it frozen?
All
Hey
right,
everyone.
share my screen
I
here
think-
just a second.
I think some of the ideas like the listserv that some people have mentioned, that might be a good way. It could also condense it into like a digest form where if everyone sends in their stuff, it'll compose it into a digest form so that all the questions are in one email, and then
Oh.
just, a slight idea. I think it's positive.
Black.
That way, maybe some of the other interest groups are interacting with the other interest groups kind of on purpose instead of separating them all. For instance, if I'd be happy to help with like a tropical fruit interest group, and then since I'm kind of alone a little bit, I get to interact with the other ones instead of just being by ourselves.
Yep.
In a digest form.
So can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to scroll through. I think I can scroll through, or maybe not. Hold on. Yeah, so we have a very long group. And how many of these are really still active? I don't know. The ones in red are the ones I know of that are active or need. We know for sure that that person's no longer around. But for example, do we need an acorn group? Because that really falls into maybe the nut growers, the northern nut growers. How many of these can be condensed down into other groups? So I'm going to print this in the next Pomona, and you can go back to to previous Pomonas and see the list. But I'd like to have a couple of people work on this list. I've got one person, and I can't remember off the top of my head who that is, and it could be somebody on this Zoom meeting, but somebody who had tried to contact a lot of these people and was able to email me back and say this person's no longer around. And then I just need to get from him which ones he knows for sure are still acting as an interest group leader. So yeah, so for example, Mayhaw and Hawthorne, I found in the list there was a combined interest group leader as well as a single interest group leader for each of those. So those, for example, could be condensed down. We could condense down into maybe stone fruits. Do we really need a permaculture interest group? I don't know. That is a big topic. In the Indiana nut and fruit growers, I think we have 10 interest chairs or contact people. We actually don't run groups. But they are our go-to people. So if somebody emails in and says, I have a question about raspberries, I send them to the person who covers all berries. So something to think about. And, if you guys have comments you want to share.
Yeah, I'm in North Miami.
I just have a question. Not entirely related, but have we ever had an editorial calendar for the Pomona?
So sort of, yes. And it kind of got off kilter a little bit when I right before I became president the summer before that. So I came on the board in August. That summer, the Pomona did not go out for reasons I won't go into, but we scrambled to get it out, and it came out in August, I think. It should have gone out in June or July. And then for a while, the winter Pomona was coming out in December, but going back in history, from what I've been able to read, it was actually supposed to be published in January. So it was like every 3 months, January, April, that's how it was scheduled.
Because it might, I have no idea, this could be heresy, but do we look at doing after we go through kind of a cleanup and alignment of the interest groups, then we maybe look at an editorial calendar with some focus so that folks know that if they're particularly interested in apples, that the palm emphasis is going to be in summer or whatever, that nuts will be, in the January or something like that, where we then can do a call for articles that are focused on a particular topic, and not just one, but like a group of topics.
Yeah, that's a possibility. Or we could still have a wide range of articles, but the interest groups, if we do go the route where we ask the interest groups to do an annual report, then have a calendar that says in the winter Pomona, these interest groups will share their information.
Right. There you go. That would be a great way to do it, is to make the annual reports of the interest group and that becomes your featured topic. It still allows you to have additional articles that might be timely or that folks want to submit.
Yeah. Because often what I've been finding as people are sending things in or gathering, and it's harder in the summer because that's when we're all busy outside. So, I think giving people the option of submitting stuff when it fits their schedule is helpful. But if we do the interest groups and have annual reports or encourage that, then perhaps letting them decide which Pomona they want to put that in, and then have that on a schedule. Every year we know that persimmons the persimmon group is going to talk about give their annual report in the fall or the winter or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or feedback?
Chris, Tim Lucier here. I see in the bylaws, that there is verbiage about program chair and then coordinator of testing groups.
Yes.
But is that different than what we're talking about right now?
So from what I've been able to discern is the program chair was the person who would be responsible for working on getting the annual conference together. And I can tell you the last person who was really the program chair was probably Jerry Lehman for the 2018 meeting. And then Jerry passed away. And then in 2019, it was a scramble. There was really nobody who was program chair. So NAFEX teamed up with NNGA, and bless his heart, Chuck Wilson, he's on this call. He did what he could. He helped recruit speakers, and he was there to help volunteer as needed. But with that particular meeting, what happened was the website was no longer being maintained on a regular basis. So the 2019 meeting never got promoted on the website, and no email went out to anybody about it. And so the presence of NAFEX members at that meeting was really low. And then of course 2020 COVID hit, and that changed everything. But the program, to get back to the point, the program chair is the person who really is responsible for coordinating the annual meeting. And then the other part of that, the testing, was it the testing sites that you saw? I can't remember.
Yeah, that was in the same bylaws.
Yeah, so to my knowledge, and those of you that have been in the group way longer than I have, in the time that I've been in NAFEX, which has only been a couple years, that's not been happening. And I don't know exactly, if I had to guess based on what I've read in the past, it would be people would create or have new varieties, and they would send them out for testing at various places in the country to see how well they did. And they might organize a meeting at one of those testing sites to see things. At the NAFEX meetings, we've also had field visits. And so that I don't know if that person also helped coordinate that as well or not. Does anybody who's been around for a long time in the group, can you elaborate?
Tim, again, Chris, and then the standing committees is the other part of the bylaws. Are these, and with these are interest groups, so they're not quite standing committees, but they're one-off groups or groups as we determine the interest groups choose to be led.
Yes, that's so. I think the standing committees, if I remember from what I've read in the past, could be things like the membership standing committee. There, I don't know if NAFEX had this. I'm sure they probably did at one point, but the Indiana group had a publication committee. There's a nominations committee. So those would be examples of standing committees.
Yeah, and we at the last real board meeting, right? We reaffirmed, I think, the membership chair. That's kind of the standing committees, right?
Yes. Yeah.
My tendency is to maybe support keeping consistent with the bylaws on the testing coordinator position idea, just to either parallel the interest groups, but the bylaws, specifically mention or encourage, all of this effort is for promoting, the excitement around, fruit growers and, living and deceased individuals who have made a contribution to that effort. And so I wonder whether or not the tasting coordinator position should be parallel as we like there's nobody signed up for the pawpaw or the persimmon I see, or whatever else we're looking for tonight. I could see a parallel of like another silo, either the same person or different, but at least we can kind of quantify those goals. Like I was talking with Chris Homanix, who I think is on the call, about saving some old Oregon pioneer apple trees. And, then that leads to the next thing of like, oh yeah, speaking of tasting, would love to, clone those with scions and then get everyone in this group, tasting the, apples that I have access to. So that's kind of, and then not to occupy the call too much, but I think the Facebook and internet and websites, these are obviously longer conversations, and we've talked a lot about that. I think there is a big asset in the many thousands of members on the NAFEX Facebook group, but then there's also kind of social chaos sometimes. To reiterate from the board meeting, the WordPress website, whoever runs that, it is a phenomenal. And I mentioned that to the Agrarian Sharing Network group, AGN, that this board is talking about, next generation and making sure that that this group doesn't go into a funk. And so just, continued congratulations to the team before me as a new person. But I think the interest groups, of course, are where a lot of people get excited. And then I think just the only thing I haven't heard enough of yet is, amateur growers or amateurs versus commercial versus, newbies versus longtime growers, and then people that have time versus people that are busy for mentorship. And then regionals, it would be the only other interest group that I was really curious about is, we can be physically distanced, but also kind of talk amongst our regions, especially with pawpaws in the south of the U.S. versus hardy persimmons or other things that people may be growing in hardy regions.
Yeah. So there are, I can give you, I'll highlight two different examples. So like, and Bill, I know Bill we can't hear him, but like with the California Rare Fruit Growers, they have a lot of sub chapters, I believe, within their group. And so and I think historically other groups have been run that way. There have been more regional groups. So for example, there was the Southern Fruit Growers that Larry was involved in, and at one point in recent years, they've struggled with membership and people being involved. In Indiana, we have the Indiana Nut and Fruit Growers, which is a pretty strong group. And we have quarterly meetings. And we've had regional people coming from Illinois and Ohio and other places to those meetings. Michigan has a group as well, but those are not part of NAFEX. So I think it is good to have perhaps regional interest groups within NAFEX that would be helpful to people, especially for people who are new. And as Tim pointed out, the mission of NAFEX is, we want to honor what the mission has been over the years and kind of revisit the bylaws and make sure that we're sticking to what we should be doing. And at last meeting, if you weren't on the last meeting, a topic, or maybe it was 2 meetings ago, the issue came up about whether or not we encourage new people who have not been growing to go to the Facebook group and join. And I think the resounding voice was, yes, we should be, because we want to be promoting fruit growing to people who want to learn. And that's, we're there to help them learn. So how we move forward and find those ways to reach those people and help those people, I think all these conversations that we're having tonight and previous nights are helpful with this. We just need to figure out the best way to do that, I think.
So
Chris, I think I'm audible now, right?
Hey, Bill. Are you still there, Bill?
Yes, I didn't go away yet. I was just going to say that when I first joined NAFEX, my impression was that it was basically regional groups that acted pretty much independently. Illinois, NAFEX Illinois group, and there were Southern groups, and there were Eastern groups, and I didn't see any uniting thing except for obviously the quarterly.
That's interesting. How far back? When did you join?
Oh gee, I don't know. I can't remember that far back.
Okay.
It was a while.
All right.
And as far as the talk about the, being true to, all our documentation and so forth, don't forget Barbara and I wrote that, so we can always rewrite it.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Eric, were you going to say something? Oh, you need to unmute, Eric.
I wanted to speak to your regional thing to say that that's probably the second most common question I get on the website is someone will say, I'm trying to start an orchard in Detroit. How do I find people near me who can tell me what I can grow? So I think Jorge suggested that we have some kind of a list where people just list, maybe the state or the city or something that they're in.
Yeah.
And some sort of contact information so that people who do join NAFEX could then just go there and look at a list and say, oh, I can email this person and ask them because they happen to be near where I'm moving to and they can tell me what I can grow.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so just for those who may not have been on previous evenings, just to give the background that I know. So if you've been in the group for a long time, you know this. They used to publish names, addresses, and everything in the Pomona once a year, and even like in Indiana, we did that in our quarterly as well, so that you always had the ability to contact anybody in the group if you wanted to. When in recent years, I don't know if this was just because things went digital or if it was a combination of that and some issues of people having inappropriate contact or attempting to contact people inappropriately, a lot of the contact information just disappeared. And so when they redid the website, this is one of the problems we currently have. If somebody signs up as a new member, all we have is their email address. We don't know what state they're in. We don't have a mailing address for the Pomona. So that's been a bit of a problem because all we have is an email address. And if, maybe it's somebody who signs up 5 years ago, they have an email address and then they retire and their email address is no longer functional, then we don't even have any way of contacting them. So that's one of the things I think as a board we need to talk about more in depth and maybe work, Eric, get your input as well on how we can facilitate this maybe on the website, so that we have privately showing, we can have a private list of people who are in the group. And that way we know where, at least if we have a city and state, that would be helpful, or country if they're not in the US. Any thoughts?
Yeah. Well, Chris, I was just honoring the website, how well it's run. You know, the team that's existed before, obviously low cost of becoming a member, I think is, fantastic too. So, you know, I know new members or new board members like me, we were talking, I think who else was talking about, like, I think it was Leslie Wade. We were kind of talking about like communications and helping out with that. But like a membership drive, like tied around, I think last couple calls also, where we're talking about whether or not certain events were going to happen as like a physical distance or online, besides these ongoing events. But I just wonder, like, what is kind of can we have a call to action from you on like, hey, let's try to do a spring membership drive, besides bringing people to the Facebook group. What are the resources that they get, besides the fabulous Pomona? Can any older members like speak to that? Like what is the history of the organization, through the growth or challenging years of like why people decided to come or and then the call for the research paper, honored those two gentlemen. And I think that's fascinating history. So I'd just like to maybe hear a little bit more to help us younger new members where we go forward.
All right, Michael's going to talk about it a little bit. As I remember it, it was less regional things, but the annual meeting was really one of the major highlights. But and just meeting people and talking about all sorts of things. But there were interest groups. If you really wanted to specialize in something, then you would try to hook up with whoever was headed up on that and get more information out of them.
This reminds me kind of like board meetings, and it also reminds me of what NAFEX always was, is kind of like a round robin, and you'd meet a few people that always stayed close to you. California always seemed really far away to me. I actually did I did a Virginia NAFEX annual meeting, and I did one in Maryland, and both of them were total fun, and especially the one at University of Maryland. And then there would be people, that they'd come all the way from California, and but you would get at these meetings, they were well received, and a lot of people did come. But NAFEX was always, it seemed like a smaller group of individuals, and there was always this amateur, which is Latin for love of the fruit, and everybody was willing to share. So that's what always made it special, is that they give their time, and you always didn't have a lot of time. So so maybe that's why it stayed small. I hope that helped. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I think one of the things, I think Tim, if I understood Tim correctly, one of the things that you're interested in, and I would follow you on this, is that how do we do a membership drive? How do we get word out outside of our annual meeting? The days of advertising in newspapers are probably gone. We do try to promote as much as we can on Facebook and social media. One of the things the board last year talked about was maybe trying to reach out. One of the things we were hoping to do is maybe to reach younger people who perhaps, maybe they hadn't started growing fruit yet, but we wanted to promote an interest in growing fruit and how to reach those people, and maybe offer a scholarship sort of membership to those to groups like that, maybe of either college students or maybe even younger kids, and teach them how to grow fruit, teach them how to graft. That would have to be more regional, and it would require a little bit of organization and effort to try and find those groups. But those are things that we could brainstorm a little bit, and maybe, certainly the people who do gardening, organic gardening and things like that. There's been recent pushes to teach kids how to grow, have a little garden at their school and things like that. So those are perhaps ways we can start reaching people more locally, and perhaps getting people interested in NAFEX that way. I don't know.
I did think of just something else when you said that. Because I have a website for edible landscaping, there'd be no reason why I couldn't put on the homepage a connection to NAFEX. And perhaps there's still some other people, like maybe Ken Asmus, I don't know. He would probably do something like that too. Also, if there's any extension people on the different articles that are written, or the publications of how to, and it had to do with fruit, that you could always put a link to the NAFEX website too. I would think that would bring in a lot of new members without doing much at all.
Yeah.
So do you think that any of the other nurseries, who, maybe not have any people who work there who are members, but like Rain Tree, One Green World, I don't know, other places, if we reached out to them, do they have sections on their websites for, outside links for other places to go to get information on fruits that we could try to get them to put a link in?
Well, I don't know, but Rain Tree has been around since I have, and I think the fellow, I can't remember his name, if he still owns it. One Green World changed hands a couple of years ago. Northwoods is still Jim Gilbert. Jim Gilbert's been an NAFEX member, or he was, way back. People like Neil Peterson, I'm sure on his website, he would put a link. We could do, that kind of thing could happen where just a link which would bring a lot of interest. If a nursery stands by a certain organization, then I think people will trust it and they'll go to it. And then if they find something that fits them or suits them, they'll stay. So,
yeah. One of the things that the Indiana group does once a year, and perhaps this could be worked in with NAFEX to be some reciprocity, is we publish in our upcoming quarterly, which will come out in March. We publish a list of nurseries. We put in the disclaimer that we don't promote any one over the other, but we do list a number of nurseries that we're aware of, and if that nursery is a member of our group, then we highlight them in bold. But it's just a way that we say thank you to them for being members of us, and maybe in exchange, they're willing to tell people about us. So perhaps with NAFEX, that's something we could consider. I know, I don't think Susan's on here. Susan spoke at the first meeting, and prior to speaking at that, she had she and I had talked just briefly about something very similar. Whereas she runs her online orchard education business, and perhaps if we allowed her to promote her online course that would be attractive to somebody new to growing, she in turn would send her students to NAFEX and encourage them to join NAFEX. So that's probably a thing we would need to hammer out with the board to get the language agreed upon, if that's something we wanted to do, but perhaps some reciprocity between nurseries or other businesses and NAFEX.
Might be able to do something like a YouTube channel. I think an awful lot of people happen into stuff on YouTube, and particularly these subscription channels that put out new ones all the time. I've seen ones where there people travel around the country visiting various homesteads, small farms, and basically explaining what each one of them does. And you could have instructional videos on that. You could visit nurseries, which would basically be free advertising for the nurseries. Thing is finding somebody that has the time and ability to go around and do that. It's not very hard these days to video and post it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know what it costs to actually advertise on YouTube? Because YouTube puts advertisements next to those things that are subject based.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's a way of covering costs, but I don't know. I don't think it costs you anything to post stuff, but I don't know.
No, it doesn't cost anything to post stuff. But I'm thinking if I go to YouTube and I say I want to learn how to graft apples, and I look for a YouTube video to show me how to graft apples. What I'm going to get is I'm going to get the hit from the biggest YouTuber that has the biggest following and, all that other stuff. I'm not going to get some video that we put up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think what Eric is saying is and I don't know how YouTube advertising works, but, if NAFEX paid, is that what you're saying, Eric? Yeah, if NAFEX paid to run NAFEX ads, so when someone pulls up that video on how to graft, no matter whose video it is, but you always get that little ad at the beginning that you got to listen to or see. Or if we can convince those people who are doing videos to put a little plug for us at the end, that would be nice as well.
Well, that's normally where you sponsor a video, so we'd still have to give them money, and then they would put a plug in for us.
Okay.
Sounds like a marketing group subcommittee too.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I was hoping someone who's on this call had any experience with marketing, but it doesn't sound like any of us do. So
Leslie does.
Out loud. I didn't just say that.
Leslie and Tim are really excited about doing this goals.
It's a great idea, and we should also just have a budget for promoting the organization, and even just promoting things like this, conference series to our own members, because the Facebook algorithm, just kills you, and only 4% of your audience is ever going to see anything you post,
Right.
In a group, unless it gets a lot of activity on it. So it'd be great for us to have a budget for promoted posts, and also maybe some YouTube advertising.
Yeah. Yep.
And how many members do we have today, Chris? And I was just going to say, do we have a goal verbally right now to double it by next year? Just obviously through attrition or natural growth, groups go up and down. But being new to the board and teaming up with Leslie and other energies that we have, that would be a phenomenal goal if we just kind of said, well, yeah, a year from today, let's have twice the paid members that are getting the Pomona and tapping into whatever these groups are going to evolve into.
Yeah, so I can tell you, so at the last meeting before Christmas, we had 375, and I think we lost a lot of people at the end of the year who perhaps have not renewed, because now we're at 350 or 350, right around 350. And I think part of the problem is when the new website was made, which was 3 or 4 years ago, and it all went digital. So there was a period where the Pomona was only sent digitally because of cost. And so the website, when your membership is up, the website sends you an email reminder. If you don't see that email reminder, if it goes into your spam, then you don't know that your membership is up. And so I think we have a lot of people who have let their membership lapse simply because they don't know that it lapsed. And we've not had a dedicated person to contact those people and say, hey, did you know your membership's about to expire? We encourage you to renew, that kind of thing. So I think twofold: acquiring new members, and first is acquiring new members, but the second is really connecting with our members and making sure we don't lose them. And that's something that we definitely need to work on. But Tim, I like the goal of double, setting a goal of a membership number, maybe doubling it in the year. From what, and maybe Chuck knows more about this than I do, but from what I understand, before the Pomona went digital only, I think we had over 1,000, maybe even a couple thousand members in NAFEX. And then when the decision was made to stop printing the Pomona and going to digital only, the number of members dropped into the 300s. So we lost a ton of people when the printed Pomona stopped. And now that we're bringing the printed Pomona back, we've brought in some people who are coming back just for that.
About right.
Chuck, you agree?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Do you put out email notices when a new Pomona edition is available?
Yes, I've been sending that out by email. The downside to that is it gets sent out as what I would call a batch. So I'm using MailChimp. So it goes out to everybody at once, and it has an increased likelihood of going to your spam box. And I can tell you, based on the analytics, that we are getting about 50% open. So if I send out 350 people, we get half of those people opening it up.
That's a really good open rate, Chris. It's, in marketing world, 25%, 20% is considered some success with email because so many people are moving away from email.
Uh-huh.
And so 50% is pretty good. So
yeah. But, if there's people who, if someone signs up, becomes a member, expects that digital Pomona, but they're not seeing the email, then they're thinking, well, I'm not getting the Pomona. Why do I keep my membership? So that's one concern. I had somebody email saying, I don't know why I signed up because I'm not getting the Pomona. And, she wasn't getting or seeing email. I will, for people who can't see the comments who might be on by phone, Larry Stevenson said that NAFEX at the height of membership had 5,000 members, and when he joined it had 2,800.
Does anyone know how many members are on the Facebook group?
5,000.
So we have there are 4,500 plus people on the Facebook group. So most of them are not members, paid members.
I could maybe say I'm pretty new to this. I guess I been a paid member maybe for 2 months.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know, somehow I heard about it on the Facebook thing because I'm in every fruit group everywhere. And so I was like, oh, here's one I'm not in. And I think I saw somewhere that this was like a real physical group where you could pay for membership. So I was excited about that. Over, most Facebook groups, you don't really know what it is.
Right.
And so I think that was exciting. So that's why I was excited to join and see, oh, they have like
a nice t-shirt. You had all the NAFEX members on your t-shirt.
So, I guess I was excited by that, but there could be more announcements on the Facebook page, or whoever's the admin, you can tag what's an announcement. So it always shows up at the top of the feed.
Yep.
So I would think the official NAFEX announcements, it'd be nice if that was at the top, because it's been really confusing to know who was speaking at these and what was happening. I can't really say that I knew. I knew Jorge because I'm an admin with him on some other fruit thing.
Uh-huh.
So I talked to him about that, and I did a post saying, hey, our admin Jorge is speaking on the rare fruit news group that we're admins on. But there's some things with the Facebook admin that you can make what you want show up a little bit more for people.
Yeah, we have pinned those or put some of those posts up as announcements. I think anybody who might be viewing Facebook on a mobile app may not see those as announcements. I don't know. I'll have to look and see
Yeah, I'm not sure. Other groups I'm in, they do show up on the mobile at the top, but
Okay.
I just checked on the NAFEX one, it doesn't. I don't know the details because I haven't tried to do it, but
Okay.
um,
I'll look into that. There's several of us who are admins on there. The ones who are most active admins right now are myself, Taylor Malone, and occasionally Eliza when she's not out in the field. I can tell you, so prior to last week or the week before, the requests we get for members to join the Facebook group, I would say anywhere from 50 to 75% of those were legitimate requests. Since all the craziness has happened with the elections and stuff, the number of robotic requests has jumped to almost 90%. So every day I'm going in and seeing about only 1 in 10 requests being a legitimate request. I don't know if it's a foreign influence or what it is, but there are robots kicking out these automatic requests to join groups, and we screen those out by questions. So people have, if a person's real, they have to answer the questions. If they're not real, those robots answer it as okay, 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 okay. And then you can look to see when they created their Facebook account, and it was like a week ago. So
go back to.
I got to echo. Sorry, I got to echo that on this Christmas. The other groups that I admin, I'm seeing the same kind of thing. A significant uptick in fake accounts. I always spend the time to, but I can understand why it would be impractical on your end, but. I actually just mass report each of those accounts, and I think the system's overwhelmed with that because spammers have taken over Facebook. But I wanted to say that about sponsored posts on Facebook. If we do sponsored posts, which I think that would be a good way to target audience, because we can actually target it to a fairly we can target them in a fairly fine-tooth way. But I would recommend making an account, another account for NAFEX, because the way that Facebook advertising works is that once they realize they can get money from somebody, they throttle your viewership more if you don't pay. So it would be like we would use a separate account to advertise NAFEX stuff. And then on YouTube, there are 2 tiers of advertising, and it can get a little bit expensive. But one tier is an ad in which people can click skip, and then that's a lot. That's very inexpensive. And then there's the captive ad, which you cannot skip, and that is more expensive per view. It seems like with both Facebook and YouTube, one thing that they do to make money, and it's kind of nefarious, is that they put your ad in front of bots, basically. So that can be thwarted a little bit by, again, being pretty exact in who we target. And then third, it would be cool to have videos that were like demonstration videos. And in fact, demonstration posts on Facebook, I think, get more views, like actually having authentic content that people are like, hey, I saw a sponsored post. That's pretty cool. It's right up my alley, as opposed to an appeal to join directly, like just a post that's crafted about why you should join, why a person should join. I think it would make more people join if there's some real content, and then it's kind of listed at the bottom. Oh, hey, you should join. Here's why. Just some thoughts.
Okay. I'm going to read a couple comments from Larry Stevenson. So Larry says it's easy to get Facebook members, but getting their $19 or $25 is terribly hard. He says mailing out free newsletters to get membership. He gets a 10% success rate on that, and that's not enough to cover his costs. If he emails free newsletters to people, he gets a 1% success rate. And then Jim says he's a member of maybe 6 different related clubs, and there are overlaps with all of them. He says you really need to show value. What are the examples? 3 to 4 of the people in this meeting are nursery owners. So yeah, you know, maybe more, if we had more members doing, posting some video demos on Facebook, that might be helpful.
You have to realize that if people can go to Facebook and get all of the information they need, then there's no reason for them to join an organization and pay money.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's something that the nut growers have been struggling with. You can get all your questions answered on Facebook and talk to people. So there's no reason to send money to join an organization.
Just internet in general. You know, you get all your information you need. So why do you need to pay anything? Everybody expects to get it for free these days, especially the young people.
Yeah.
You know, I would say that we just maybe need to segment our membership a little bit and understand that there are different people at different levels or you know, progress in their journey in relationship to fruit growing. From the newbies that we see a lot of on Facebook to folks that are literally, you know, writing the scientific texts. And I look back, and I joined in 2017 when we were planting our orchard. We're newbies. I planted fruit trees before, but this is our family, you know, bigger family orchard. And I didn't renew in 2018. And I was thinking tonight before the call why that was. And I think it was because I felt intimidated that the folks that were the core of NAFEX were, you know, experts, and I didn't belong in that club. And so, you know, I think at that point, maybe I didn't see the Pomona as much. I didn't really understand how to engage with the organization. So maybe if we kind of break down our membership and think about what are we doing for the newbies, what are we doing for the commercial growers, what are we doing for the, you know, the pros and folks on the scientific end, and then how do we communicate the value proposition to all of those folks?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep, that's a good
That
point.
was the central problem with Home Orchard Society, and why we had to close, was that we couldn't convince enough people to join. Our big draw, we had a Palm News article or quarterly that would go out to people's mailboxes, and that was cool and people liked it. But most of our members either went to our arboretum at a local community,
Clackamas community.
I think we lost Chris.
He's in another galaxy now.
Yeah.
Well, he was. I was on some of the, and he helps run the Agrarian Sharing Network, and we talked about the same thing too. And the Home Orchard Society just regrouped as another name, so they're carrying on that Arboretum and the Scion Network and the old orchards. So I think this NAFEX group with the new board, you know, I think we need to spend some time with the bylaws, and you know, that maybe the subgroup on marketing can take a lot of these great ideas to the next level. But I think the members goal, we should get to 1,000 then in a year. You know, I think everything is in a right place. Maybe some hiccups and stuff with people being upset with losing the print or the nice print or whatever. But I think we could get to 1,000 by the end of this year, and then 5,000 by 2025. And so as a board, during our next meeting, I could propose that to everyone else, and we can try to have a path and a vision to get back to that, because I think everything is in place. The assets are here, and the value proposition we can deliver.
Great.
I love that, Tim. The only caveat I would say is that let's take a look at what's happening out in the world in terms of how many people are actually still growing fruit versus what they were doing 10 years ago or whatever. So we just make our membership goals realistic with what's happening.
Well, I think COVID shows us that people are doubling down on small backyards. Yeah, so I think yep. I mean, the WordPress website is phenomenal. So we will deal with the newsletters and WordPress integration. The Pomona is being handled well. Congratulations to the team. That is a hard thing. And then we'll figure out the Facebook with the us kids or the team of the marketing team of the gurus we have.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I would agree. There's definitely, I mean, we're seeing this in the Indiana nut and fruit growers. I admin that Facebook group, and the number of legitimate requests we had since COVID started, that group has grown by leaps and bounds. It's incredible. And I think as soon as we have our meetings again, when it's safe to have meetings, I think we will have a lot of people out because they're young and they want to learn. And I think, part of the problem has been in the past that, there wasn't this need or this interest. And I think, tides are changing a little bit and people want to start growing their own food, and they realize that there is value in that and they might need that in the future. So I think there's great potential to tap in. I think one of the keys will be it really to offer in-person interaction as well as what we're doing online, because I know for me, when I joined Indiana, the Indiana Nut and Fruit Growers, I wanted to learn and be able to talk to people directly, and I wanted to be able to see things like grafting in person, which is what this group offered. And then somebody's not muted. Hold on.
There is some.
And then I ended up coming because Jerry Lehman said, "Hey, you should go to NAFEX. Their annual conference is only 2 hours away." And that's how I got there. So it started out more regional, and then I found NAFEX through my regional group. So I think the more we can offer people help locally, whether it's through small local gatherings, or as Eric pointed out, he's getting lots of people asking, who in my area can help me? And if we can provide that to them and show value, as somebody put in the comments, we need to show value. What's the value of NAFEX? Why become a member? What value for your $19 can we give you? And I think that will go a long way.
This is Chris again. Sorry, I cut out a moment ago. But one idea I thought about with HOS, but we didn't implement, is maybe we change around the membership model in that instead of having annual dues, we make a Subscribe Star or Patreon-like account, and we charge, $1 a month or $2 a month or something like that, or $3 a month. And they just sign up, and it's the same thing, but it's within one of these frameworks that exist that people feel like, oh, okay, I'm chipping in. I don't know, just making it really easy.
Okay. Any other thoughts? We're getting close to the 8 o'clock time, and I know people's time is valuable.
I have to chime in about the website real quick.
Uh-huh.
I believe that March is our deadline when we lose our website, unless we take some action.
What do we need to do?
Well, our hosting service is still in the previous guy's name.
Ooh.
And we need to get that switched. We need to get it switched into the club's name.
Okay.
So that would probably require you, as an official representative of the club, to call the hosting service and explain to them that it was run by one of your members who isn't available anymore, and that we'd like to take over running it, and see what they say.
Okay.
Otherwise, if they won't let you do that, we need to figure out a way to get hold of the previous guy and get him to be willing to spend the effort for him to call them and let them transfer it to our name.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Let's get the board together. Make sure we have everything in place to get that going. Good job, Eric.
Yeah.
One
So
more.
I will send out an email to the board, and Eric, you'll be included on that so that you can remind us of this and give me I know you emailed me who the hosting group was way back when, and I've forgotten off the top of my head. And I think if we do have problems, we can get Taylor involved to try and track him down if need be.
One more thought about accessing new members. With all the COVID related sales this year, almost all nurseries had banner years. Mm-hmm. And if you have a list of nurseries, I would contact them and ask them to definitely put a NAFEX link in on their websites or catalogs, whatever they do, so that they will get more sales out of it, but they can also, tell people they can get more information about, more fruit growing, at this website from people that are doing it for quite a while. And, and then, keep them listed in the Pomona, especially if they sign up, to promoting NAFEX.
Yeah, that's a good idea because, somebody who's new to growing, they buy an apple tree from a nursery. They don't get any,
no help whatsoever. And the time they don't even survive because they don't know how to plant them. And,
yep.
But I'd say 25 to 50% of the nursery sales this year were newbies.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. One more thing. Larry Stevenson says we need at least a flyer. One every member could print out themselves and pass out at events. Larry says he could pass out 1,000 a year. Every customer could get one. It would be cheap, and also a membership sign-up form with that flyer. So that's something, Leslie, we can maybe talk about that. Because I know you're probably really good at putting that kind of stuff together. So yeah, if we have a flyer that we can just email out to members, or they can download it off the website and help us promote NAFEX. I did this at the Indiana fruit nut growers last 2 falls ago. And we got a couple people that way. So.
And I'm happy to take a more active role in the marketing stuff. I signed up to be program chair as well. So if I just need to figure out where to kind of focus time. So I'm hoping as program chair that I can get kind of a committee together that will help work on the conference, whether that turns out to be virtual or in person. Okay. That would be awesome. And can you remind me, Chris, when the next board meeting is?
So that's one of those of you who are on the call and on the board. We there's a couple of options. I can email out a survey and you can give me feedback, or we could either meet right after next week's meeting, or we could meet the following Thursday on the 28th if we want to keep it consistent on a Thursday night. So Tim and Chris, Leslie, do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I'm flexible.
As soon as possible, whatever works.
We're simply not a chapter, so there's no one.
All right. Well, I'll email the board out. I'll email to the board tomorrow, and I'll suggest maybe next week that we meet right after the speaker. And if that doesn't work, we'll find another date within the next week or so. Shannon, I think you're speaking next week, correct?
Yep, I think so.
All right. Do you want to give Shannon and I are going to talk a little bit more. Shannon, if you want to stay on afterwards, we can chat. But You want to give a little heads up about what you're going to be talking about?
Yeah, I have a research project I've been working on for a few years on passive solar greenhouse technology stuff. I'm an engineer. It's done a lot of thermal design for a lot of years, and so it's kind of a fun project. I'm in South Dakota, which is a fairly cold climate. So yeah, I've got a lot of fun stuff I'm growing, a lot of fruits and non-fruits. But my project's mostly on designing passive solar greenhouse technologies so we can grow stuff without fossil fuels.
Awesome.